There are two very important terms in the North Carolina contract that relate to finishing up the closing of the property. It's the settlement and the closing. And a lot of people use these interchangeably, but they are different. And today we're going to explain the difference. Today I have my handy dandy North Carolina offer to purchase and contract. And if you've seen my other videos, you know I don't normally read off of paper, but this is very important that we talk about the exact terminology. So I'm going to be giving you the exact definitions from the North Carolina contract as to what settlement is and what closing is. So we're going to start with settlement. So the North Carolina contract defines it as the proper execution and delivery to the closing attorney, that's me, of all documents necessary to complete the transaction contemplated by this contract, including the deed, settlement statement, deed of trust, and other loan or conveyance documents, and the closing attorney, again, that's me, receipt of all funds necessary to complete such transaction. So think about this as, okay, we've gotten all the documents we need and we've gotten the money that we need. Your closing appointment, what most people call the closing, is actually your settlement. Now closing is a much longer definition. It's got a lot more components. And closing actually includes the settlement. So if you've seen one of my other videos where I talk about the difference in cash to close and closing costs, it's kind of similar to that concept. The North Carolina contract defines closing as the completion of the legal process, which results in the transfer of title to the property from seller to buyer, which includes the following steps. First, the settlement that we just talked about. Second, the completion of a satisfactory title update to the property following the settlement. 3, the closing attorney's receipt of authorization to disperse all necessary funds. And 4, recordation in the appropriate county register of deeds and deeds of trust, if any, which shall take place as soon as reasonably possible for the closing attorney after settlement. And then after the closing, those things are done, then the money can be dispersed. So these are the things that people often forget about. After you've signed, you think that I'm done, the house is mine. Or commonly we see agents say, you're just gonna e-record this, right? So they think that we can walk back to a computer, scan the deed, and we're done. But all of these other steps have to take place after the settlement. The next step is the most important, which is the satisfactory title update. So that is another title search. We've done the title search in the beginning, but that's up to a certain date. So we still have to check from the time that the title search was completed up until the minute before the deed records, or as close in time as possible, to make sure that the seller has not gotten any judgments or liens, that there hasn't been anything negative that's happened to the title of the property that would make the buyer not get clean title. So that is required by law. That's not just a step we take for fun. The next thing is that the closing attorney has to have authorization to disperse the funds. Now that could be from the buyer saying, yep, if you're paying cash, yep, we're done, go ahead, let's close. Or if there's a lender involved, the lender has to give funding approval. So they have to say, yes, here is the money, you are authorized to close and disperse. If we don't have that approval, then we're just kind of sitting around waiting for that. We cannot just, say the lender sends their money, but they're not quite ready. They haven't reviewed the documents and said, yes, these are satisfactory. We can't just decide to record just because the money's sitting in our account. And then lastly, recording. So the deed has to be recorded, of course. And then if there's a deed of trust or any other recordable instrument that has to be done, like a power of attorney, then those have to be recorded. Now, once all of those things are done, the closing is done. And the closing has to be done before any money is sent to parties that are owed money. So seller, you are not getting your money before the deed is recorded. That happens all the time. The seller's sitting at my table and says, well, let me tell you, you cannot record that deed until I get my money. Well, that's not how the law works, unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So they tend to be quite disappointed about that, but this is the legal requirement, all the steps that have to happen pursuant to the law and the contract that the party signed before any money can be dispersed. So as you can see, settlement and closing, they're very closely related, but they're different. Settlement is a part of closing, but not the complete closing. All right, I hope that helped explain the difference in what is settlement and what is closing. If you learned something today, subscribe to the channel. If you didn't learn something today, you probably will tomorrow from the channel, so go ahead and subscribe anyway, and I'll see you in the next video.